good evening, everybody. So, as usual, we got a full schedule. We got a whole lot to talk about. We're gonna get this thing in, get it crunking, get it cranking. Sure. Hey, good to see you. Thank you for checking in. I'm getting myself together right here. I gotta do all these last minute little preliminary things before I'm able to get it in like I need to. So it's never enough time in a day. So much happens all the time. Every time you turn around, somebody is making news. Vanilla, I see you. Thank you for checking in. All right, so we're gonna get this thing started. So y'all get ready. Put your seatbelts on because it's gonna be a ride like always. All right. So, y'all know it's always something. And I'm going to tell you like this. I'm going to start out on a good note before I get to some of this other madness that's going on in the world. And y'all also have to forgive me. I'm working at a deficit today. I had a piece of equipment take a doo-doo on me just a little while ago at the last minute. Y'all know how that kind of stuff goes. But it's all good because we always ready no matter what. But now check it out. This show is called When They March. Now there's a reason why I chose that particular name. See, I spent a lot of years, and even in my own skepticism at times, I spent a lot of time worrying about how things would go, how the way things would play out for us socially, and with all of the changes that have taken place in the last 20 or 30 years, and how things would go in regard to civil rights, and whether or not we would as a people would actually be treated the way we should be in the future. Good evening, Cynthia. I see you. And I gotta say, right off the top, I have argued with many people. I've gone back and forth with many an individual about marching. I've heard people jump up and down and hoop and holler about marching doesn't do anything. That's the old way. We need to do something different. Nobody marches anymore. Marching don't accomplish nothing. Now that's the first part of it, where they talk about how nothing was getting done. Now keep in mind, the very same people who've always complained about marches and what they don't do are people who haven't done anything themselves. Well, something I've learned in my lifetime, and that's a thing called consistency. Good evening, Helen. Thank you, dear. I'm going to. That's exactly what I'm about to do. I'm about to take my time and I'm about to lay it down for you. Good evening, Renee. We sit there and we spend a lot of energy on our pessimism. It's like I hear people talk about the crime in Chicago. See, we've allowed ourselves to buy into the narrative that has been put in front of us. Good evening, Mr. Honeycutt. I see you. Muriel, good to see you. We keep buying into these narratives. And every time somebody holler, every time you're watching a television show, you're watching national news, and the first thing everybody wants to say is, well, what about Chicago? What about all the crime in Chicago? What about all the killing that's going on in Chicago? Well, the problem is that so many people have bought into that fallacy that Chicago has become the poster child for the myth, the lie that is black on black crime. Because y'all have heard me rant about this before and go on and on about it and talk about how, there's no such thing as black on black crime, specifically and mainly, not the only reason why, but mainly because there's white on white crime, Asian on Asian crime, Mexican on Mexican crime. Do I need to go down the whole list? I don't think so. And the point is this: all communities have crime. All communities have murder. All communities have death within them. The difference between what they do or have done and what we deal with is that when we're talking about police overreach and injustice, is that, and the reason why it is injustice is because these people don't get prosecuted at the same rate as a regular citizen. And that therein lies the problem of what we're dealing with currently. And at this point, I don't even want to call it a problem anymore, because finally the door has been opened and attention is being paid. Initially, my concern is pandering. We know that a lot of our Caucasian counterparts will pander in order to fit in or be politically correct or not do the wrong thing. However, it appears to me, and it seems that every single day since the now martyr George Floyd life was taken, things have begun to take a turn. And it has begun to take a turn because of marching and protesting, much like it did in the 60s when they marched and they protested. The movement and momentum began to take place whenever we had more people participating. And when I say more, I mean those brethren who don't look like us. And that only shows that when people in this country, regardless of skin color, get together and stick together, then democracy tends to work the way that it's supposed to. However, we have had our democracy has been so damaged and co-opted over the centuries, and particularly in the last few decades, that there's a lot of damage that's been done. There's been an awful lot of damage done just in the last 3.5 years. A tremendous amount of damage. A lot of good work has been undone. And because of that, I believe a lot of what is taking place also lends itself toward the betterment and the direction in which we're all going in this country. I said all of that to say this. Today, Andrew Cuomo in New York signed into or did an executive order that is a piece of police reform legislation that's going to be sweeping, and it's going to be important. It's going to make a change. It's going to make a difference. I hope, it is my hope, that the powers that be, the police forces and individuals in law enforcement, will adhere to the rules laid out. And if not, that the consequences will be swift and definite. I hope that these things play out the way that they are designed to play out, and I hope that everyone works toward making sure that that happens. There is my pessimism on top of my optimism. Now, with that said, what I really wanted to get to about this subject, the marching, and this is where I'm probably going to make some folks mad. I don't really care. Here's the deal. I have listened for years to people, again, buy into the narrative when we talk about a gentleman by the name of Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, here's a man who I have had the pleasure of meeting on more than one occasion, who I happen to know for a fact gets up and does more on a Monday morning for the cause of black people and the justice in this country where we are concerned than most people do in their entire lifetimes, because there are quite a few folks who don't ever lift a finger. They're real quick to sit in their chair or on their couch and discuss how they don't think what he does is this, or he is that, or he's a poverty pimp. And these are all terms, much like black on black crime, that let me not say we, some of us have bought into, to the degree that we're so quick and anxious to bash one another. When I say bash one another, I mean, for example, my people who say things like, all of these people marching around the country because a cop killed a black man, a white cop. Let me preface that by saying a white cop killed a black man, but nobody says anything when a black man kills another black man in Chicago. Here we go again. Nobody's marching for that. Let's not talk about apples and oranges, number one. Number two, if you are one of these people who chooses to bash your own rather than do something to benefit your people, then I think you should be quiet. I think you have nothing to say. Bobby Goodlow, thank you for checking in. You are absolutely correct. Al Sharpton knows our history and he should be respected. And I agree 150%, despite people may not having their personal grievances, whatever they may be. Andrew Cuomo. Now let's remember, New York, the city that Al Sharpton did the majority of his work in the beginning, a city that bashed him and talked about him and rode him like the Lone Ranger rode Silver. Today, they gave him his accolades. They spoke on his behalf of all of the work that he has put in, all of the many miles that he has marched, all the shoe leather that he left in his wake. And this is something that very few truly understand because they don't do the work. If you don't do the work, don't talk. Put in the work first and then tell us about how you didn't think it was all worth it. The bottom line is this. Good evening, Val. Good to see you. He put in the work. The bottom line is, in the last 3 weeks, we have begun to see the payoff. We have begun to see what it looks like when you put dollar after dollar in the slot machine and it finally pays off. This is what it looks like. It's moving in that direction. And without the Reverend Sharptons of the world, these things wouldn't be happening. Let's be clear. People say, oh, he just show up when the cameras show up. Well, my question is, when the cameras are off and he is not in your immediate view on television, have you ever went to where he was? Have you ever visited a National Action Network event? Have you ever done anything that didn't come to you through the television where he is concerned? If you have not, say nothing. Say less, as they say in the street. Say less. Because you don't know. And if you ain't there to see it, how do you criticize it? Let's talk about the money. People talk about, oh, he's just doing this to get paid and this, that, and the other. You got a job too, right? Are you going there for free? In case you didn't know, when people are in distress and they need national attention brought to an event that is against our people, somebody got to pay for that. Plane tickets ain't free. Fortunately, Tyler Perry made sure that Reverend Sharpton got where he needed to be this week by giving him his private plane for that purpose. But let's be real. Lawyers cost money. You think them lawyers jump up on TV and they stand up there and they start talking about these people's problems in their case and they representing these families? You think they're doing all that for free? All that costs money. And anybody who thinks that any of these people who do everything for our benefit are supposed to operate freely and without compensation of any kind, you need your head examined. Something wrong with the way you think. You need to change that around. Now, with that, like I said today, my man was sat there. He sat there while while Governor Cuomo signed into law their the legislature. Well, I guess he just got the legislation together. I'm not sure exactly, but the bottom line is police reform is about to take place, and he was right there as a welcome guest by the governor of the state to be sure that he witnessed the signing of these new laws. Understand what that means. And trust and believe New York will not be where it stops. These things are going to move forward nationally. They are moving forward nationally. These are the things that need to begin to take place. Understand, without protest and without riots, the voice of the unheard, without marching tirelessly, we are not here right now. We are in a better place. We're moving toward a better place. And don't get me wrong, I'm not on I'm not jumping up and down, beating my tambourine. Oh yeah, we finally made it. We's free, we's free. It ain't like that. But I am saying that we are moving in a better direction. And without the work put in by those most criticized, we wouldn't be here. Understand that even when Dr. King was killed, he had a very unfavorable rating. Most people didn't care for Dr. King. He was treated much like Reverend Sharpton is treated. A lot of people don't know the climate of the time. See, a lot of these people who jump up now hollering about Dr. King, see, they're using revisionist history. They don't want to tell you the truth about the fact that he was called a troublemaker and how so many preachers wouldn't even allow him to come to their church. They don't tell you that part in the history books. They don't tell you the part about the fact that he really was not nonviolent. He just understood how to play the game against the violent people in order to show what needed to be shown to the rest of the world so that we actually received benefits from it. He understood the game. When he was playing chess, they was playing checkers. That's why he got what he got. That's why we got what he helped us to get. You have to understand the way things really are, not the way you've been sold the game. Christopher Wood, thank you for checking in. Dana Brock, I see you, my man. Fast Esther, we see you. You have to understand the way the game is played. And understand this, it wasn't nonviolent protesting. It was very violent. It's just that the violence wasn't coming from where they always claim the violence comes from. Because we know who the violent ones really are. Ain't no black folks running around here lynching nobody, dragging people, hanging people, murdering people, and smiling about it, castrating, decapitating, and anything else you can think of that is an atrocity against humanity. We don't get down like that. We know who the violent ones really are. Now, today, I found out about a lady named Carol Horne. I want you all to put that in your mental Rolodex. Carol Horne was a police officer. And you notice I said was. She was a police officer in Buffalo, New York. Now let's also remember that Buffalo is the same city that the elderly man was pushed down and now has brain damage. He is I understand he's been released from the hospital and is now in rehabilitation. Now, let's also keep in mind that the Buffalo Police Department are the same ones who wrote a report and claimed that that man tripped before they knew that there was video of their wrongdoing. And subsequently, the 57 members of that particular detail, which was a emergency response detail, all quit. And they didn't quit being police, but they did quit that branch of the department, in solidarity with the two officers who basically did what unfortunately officers are becoming known to do. And this particular officer, Carol Horne, worked for the Buffalo Police Department, and in fact she has been out of the job for many, many years now. Well, it appears that her case, or the case that involved her, is coming back up. I want you all again, put her name in your mental Rolodex. Carol Horne, Buffalo, New York. Here's why. Apparently her and another officer were attempting to arrest someone. And the man they were attempting to arrest, I guess he put up a bit of a tussle. Of course, who knows? Because you know the police will always say stop resisting even when you're not, just so they can justify whooping your ass and getting away with it. And fortunately, this is something that is becoming a part of the past because we have so much videotape now, and they are actually disciplining officers these days, thankfully, finally. Well, he was in the process of arresting this man and had him in a chokehold. This officer, Carol, she took it upon herself to jump upon the other officer's back. Now, can you imagine that? You got one officer trying to arrest you and the other one trying to save you. The suspect was black. Carol Horne is black. She did not like the way this officer was handling this suspect because he was choking him. So she jumped onto this other officer's back to pull him off of that officer. Subsequently, she ended up losing her job. She was terminated, and it was determined that she put herself and other officers in danger by stopping that officer from choking the life out of the suspect. Now, here we are, fast forward 10, 15 years. I can't even remember what the time frame is. And now her case is being looked at once again because she went before an arbitrator and they determined that that other officer was right, of course, white man, black woman, and she was wrong and she lost her job. Now, 19 years on the job. She had one more year before she would receive her pension. She was terminated. So needless to say, she didn't get her pension either. Well, they're looking at her case again as we speak. I say put that in your mental Rolodex. Keep that one on the forefront because we may need to begin petitioning or whatever the case may be. Just look her up to help push for her to receive her just due. Because think about this. What if a Carol Horne had been at the scene of George Floyd? What if a Carol Horne had jumped on the back of Derek Chauvin and stopped him from murdering George Floyd? Who's to say that the suspect that her colleague was attempting to arrest and choke the life out of had killed that man? Would that be one more name on the roster of many that we have right now of dead, unarmed black bodies over these years? So, of course, she has my support and anything that I can do to help promote, push, or drive that particular situation in her favor. I think it's pretty tragic that this is where we are today, that now all of a sudden that's unacceptable. I mean, out the clear blue sky, who saw this coming? I didn't see it coming. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I didn't see it coming. But, you know, here we are. And like I've said before, and I'll continue to say, we need to take full advantage of all of this. I think that her situation deserves to be looked at in a fair and unbiased manner. Of course, we know that that's always a stretch. But this is a black woman who deserves what she got coming for doing what she did, when in fact we know that she could very well have may have very well saved someone's life. Dennis McCullum, you say, was it self-defense? No, you could call what she did self-defense, mainly because she was defending the life of a suspect, albeit a black man, knowing that an officer was in dereliction of his duty. And that is just one of those things that needs to be dealt with where police work is concerned in general. Other officers need to be holding their fellow officers accountable. When the police begin to police themselves, then the general public will benefit greatly, because we no longer will have to be concerned about whether or not we not only have to be afraid of the criminals, but we also will have to be afraid of the police. That within itself is an issue. And and speaking of suspects, there's a story that came out of Oklahoma. Absolutely, Christopher Willard, you're absolutely right. Her job requires her to hold her colleagues accountable. All police officers are required. In fact, I didn't go over the details of the new legislation that Andrew Cuomo got into today. I'm getting ready to. Where's my glasses? I'm getting ready to read. I'm gonna show you how great what they're doing is. Now check this out. In New York, the new reform bill, it criminalizes the use of a chokehold. Reversal of statute that protects police disciplinary records. So now they're going to get rid of police records, the ability for them to hide these police records. So in other words, they can't just be jumping around from department to department like police officers do after they do damage in one place, then they go jump somewhere else and get a job and they're back okay. They're stopping that. And whenever there's a police killing, there's going to be a special investigator for the police, so that they don't just go in there and say, oh, well, it's okay, it's a good shoot, let's just call it a day. They're going to stop that. So now whenever a police shooting takes place, there's going to be a special investigator that comes in that's going to take over those cases that are not connected to those departments, that will then prosecute those officers that need to be prosecuted, whether it's a good shoot or a bad shoot. Cynthia Odom, and tear down the blue wall. Here is an essay out of 79 cops terminated for action. 70 got their jobs back. Absolutely right. And that's one of the things they're stopping in New York. And I'm happy to say that needs to go national. If we had a leader in the people's house right now, something like that might be taking place. But we all know that we don't have anyone leading us currently. And now, last but not least, criminalize false race-based 911 calls. Now that's a big one. How many times have we seen people cry wolf, the sky is falling, and a black man tore it down, and nothing happens? Adrian Stone, thank you for checking in. I see you. That's going to stop. In New York anyway. It needs to go national. I believe that it will. But that, for me, is absolutely excellent, because now fragile white folks who feel some kind of way can't stand in the middle of Central Park and say that I'm going to call the police on you and tell them that you're threatening me in order to get the cavalry to come out and shoot you down like a native and skin you and scalp you. That's over for them, hopefully. All of these things look real good on paper. I want to see them put to the test, and I believe that that's going to begin to happen. because we are making a hell of a lot of moves here lately. And yes, people who make false reports like that need to be held accountable. And I'm glad, for one, that that is beginning to be a thing. Back to Oklahoma. So in Oklahoma City, now this is where, and I was afraid this was going to happen, but here's what happened. So they had this footage of this guy. It's not funny, but it kind of is, because you know, motherfuckers gonna try it. Forgive my French, but you know they gonna try it. Anyway, so in Oklahoma City, this guy, the police got a call that this guy was waving a gun around. Well, the police show up to the scene. Said guy takes off running. He runs a good little ways. Well, cop ran him down. Ran him down real good, too. 2 white cops, 1 female, 1 male, 1 black male, who has been accused of waving a gun at somebody. Well, they chase him down, and on the news, they were pointing out that the officer, when the suspect said he couldn't breathe, the officer said, "I don't care." Well, needless to say, that offended a lot of people. Here's the problem, though. The guy ran from the police. They did find the gun in his pocket. And he was putting up a good run, too. They had all of their body cams on. He finally got tackled. And when the officer was trying to put him in cuffs, he did put up a fight. So the next thing he said was, "I can't breathe." Now this is where it gets funky. Because now, just like you have police who constantly say, "Stop resisting," even though you're not, now you're going to have people saying, "I can't breathe," even though they can. And this is where it's going to start muddying the water. Of course, we all know that when somebody is running and trying to get away from 5-0 and trying to survive this thing, they're going to do whatever they got to do. They're going to say whatever they got to say. Well, here's the twist. It turns out that after they got him in handcuffs, he actually did pass out. And upon passing out, they put him in a position that whenever a person passes out, you're supposed to roll them on their side, and you use their knee as a prop for their body, and you extend the lower arm and you place the other one over their chest so that they can breathe. They did that. And an ambulance did arrive. And when the ambulance arrived, they took him to the hospital. And a short time later, he actually did die. Now, funny thing is, based on the way they handled him in the video, they weren't doing anything that appeared to cut off his breathing. But as it turns out, the man had asthma and he had a collapsed lung. He had run from the police knowing he has asthma. And to top that off, he had amphetamines in his system. Now, if all of that is true, I would call him a candidate for a Darwin Award, because he knew his condition. He knew more about himself in that way than the police do, of course. And he kind of like set himself up for that failure. I don't know what he expected. And I am not one to sugarcoat. And if he did what he wasn't supposed to do legally and he got caught out there, well, bro, you can't put that one on the police. I can't see it. You know, that exactly, Poppy, crying wolf. I come on, man, stop it. Anyway, yeah, so dude had it all. He had everything all wrong on this one. I hate to see that young man pass. I hate for him to have an untimely death, but this is where we at. Now, on to the next thing. So, all while these, and Dennis, this is something you brought up yesterday. This is what we're going to get on right now. All while these protests and riots and looting were going on in Chicago. Now, remember, I categorize those in three different ways. Now, remember, those are three different groups of people, because rioters are not, well, sometimes they protesters, but rarely. But looters are not rioters or protesters. They just looters. They're opportunists. So let's be clear about who's who. Protesters are still out there. The rioters have taken their spoils and gone on. All right. I mean, the looters. So anyway, so Chicago, which is now run by, I'm sorry, not Chicago is run by, but the police department is run by a fellow by the name of David O'Neill Brown, who actually used to be the police chief right here in Texas and in Dallas. And so yesterday, they had a press conference, and the press conference was about 13 Chicago police officers who literally sat still. Well, let me back up. This is how the story goes. Apparently, rioters, possibly looters, broke into Alderman Bobby Rush's office, and they were gone, but the office had been broken into. Well, the police officer showed up, and for those of you who don't know who Bobby Rush is a longtime Chicago alderman, activist, and former Black Panther. Well, Bobby Rush, apparently these guys, these officers, went in and began to relax. 13 of them, eventually. They all slept, made coffee, and popcorn, and they was chilling. They was chilling in his office for 5 hours while the entire neighborhood was being torn apart. So they had a press conference about this on yesterday, and it turns out that quoting, and I'm just going to leave the last part of what he said on the table. The quote was, "I'm not playing." Now, my man said they're going to get to the bottom of it. They don't have all of the officers' names or who all they were, but they do have videotape, because Bobby Rush apparently came in and rewound and checked the tape, only to find 13 of Chicago's finest. And I ain't gonna even go in and tell you what color they was. All in there chilling in his office while the city was coming down around him. One of the police deputy chiefs made it his business to let it be known that he was out there on the front line, him and other officers, having rocks and everything else thrown at him while these guys was in there chilling. And needless to say, they are pissed. Now, Lori Lightfoot let them know, well, Dennis, you're right. CPD union does hold them up, but guess what? What? They are going to not be held up. I think that the union is going to have a very difficult time protecting them on this one. Not to mention the fact that Congressman Rush is pissed off about it as well. In other words, this goes almost all the way to the top. Them unions, they're going to be a problem, but I don't think they're going to get away with this. I think, in fact, if they're not very careful, which actually takes me back to the Buffalo Police Department, because, the union is the reason why those guys kind of acted out the way they did in that case. Andrew Cuomo Anyway, New York governor has taken it upon himself. He's basically letting unions know ain't nothing happening. Buffalo is pretty much getting ready to get the same treatment. That's still his state. Chicago is going to probably follow suit. These unions are going to mess around and they're going to end up going the way of all the other unions that have gone away if they're not very, very careful. Good evening, Coco. I see you. So anyway, Lori Lightfoot, the Mayor Lori Lightfoot, we know her feet ain't light because she will put one where it belongs. She's been doing plenty of that lately. So she put up a big old picture on on the screen of these officers lounging around Congressman Rush's office. And she basically put out an ultimatum. And she told them straight up, you know who you are. We are investigating. We are going to get to the bottom of it. We are going to find out who you are. Don't let me have to come get you. Turn yourselves in. So she basically told them cats they better come on with it. It wouldn't be so bad if it was just all officers, but it turns out there were commanders and captains and police officers all in there chilling. That's a hairy situation. And they're going to have a very difficult time getting out of that one. Union or no union. I'll be interested to see how that goes. Now, we're going to go back to talking about marching a little bit, but we're going to do it in a little bit different way. So check this out. There is a new product out. Let me show you about marching. Let me show you about change. Necessity is the mother of invention. And apparently, there is a young man who has invented something that I think is quite ingenious. Take a good look at this. 18-year-old David Price. He is the creator of the safety pouch. It's a removable document holder and it clips to the window of your vehicle. You can present all of your driving credentials during a traffic stop, keeping your hands in sight at all times on the wheel. Now, I think that this is quite ingenious, and I'm going to buy one just to support, if nothing else. But this is proof right here, ladies and gentlemen, that all of this, that there will be a lot more things that will come forward from what is a tragedy. Tragedy has a way, it's like the phoenix. Everything burns to the ground. And then from there, greatness rises. This allows you not to have to be bothered with unfortunate incidents with law enforcement. You don't even have to talk to them. You can take this thing and hang it outside your window with your driver's license on, your insurance stuff in it, and there's nothing for them to say to you. If you've got your cell phone rolling, now mind you, y'all think about this. It's a damn shame you got to do all of this. But let's keep it 100. You don't have to be bothered with the police. They ain't got to say nothing to you. They don't even have to tell you why they pulled you over. Hey man, here go my license and my registration. Do whatever you're going to do. I don't even need to roll my window down. We don't need to have there's nothing for us to talk about. Period. Write my ticket and move around. I think that is brilliant. I could think of more than a few times I could have used that. Now that's a young black man right there. Okay. I think that is a fantastic product. Now we all know that there's going to be some overzealous cop whose ego is bigger than his badge, and they're going to do everything in their power to create a problem just cause they can, because that's what many of them do. I like the fact that this thing is bright orange. It'll stand out even when it's dark. It gives clarity to everything that needs to take place. I think it's brilliant, and I think we all need to support that young man. That is thesafetypouch.com. I'm going to look that cat up. Might have to grab me one of them. I like that. So, again, this is why we march. This is why. Let me tell you another interesting little bit of information. It appears that there is a young lady out of St. Louis named Kennedy Mitchum. And she, like myself, apparently has lots of interactions with others about definitions and about the realities of black life. In doing so, she had a back and forth with someone about the definition of racism. And the definition, apparently, in her understanding, was incorrect. So, she wrote to Merriam-Webster's, because that is the definition that everyone seems to want to use. And they have actually gone forward in changing the definition of the word racism. Her name is Kennedy Mitchum out of St. Louis, Missouri. And I say kudos to her, because she clearly understands what's going on out here. And there are those who refuse to try to understand what's going on out here and just won't do things the right way. But she is making change. And this goes back to what I said before about the necessity for change and how these changes begin to take place and how you just can't see sometimes where it's coming from and what direction it's going to hit you from.
Everyone wants to order their kids.
So that is, in my opinion, a fantastic thing, and we need more like that. Now, let's talk again about why we march. So today, see, it just gets better. It just gets better. All of this. See, these things are what make the fact that George Floyd did not die in vain. See, all of this is a product of that. And if y'all remember, those of you who with me all the time, if y'all remember, I said a week ago, maybe more, that George Floyd's death was not a mistake. And I mean that in that everything happens the way that it's supposed to. George Floyd was put on this earth to leave when he did, the way he did, for many purposes. There was a plan on his life. Understand that. That plan is playing out right in front of our eyes. And every day that we don't do something to make it all worthwhile, we've allowed that man to die in vain. And I'm just going to tell y'all, it's a whole lot going on. The stuff that I talk about on here on this show is, I don't even scratch the surface for all of the stuff that's going on. That man's life he didn't die for nothing. There's a reason. He was put here for that very thing. It ain't as tragic as we make it up to be. It's a blessing. He was put here for that reason. God had a plan. Now, let's go to Louisville, Kentucky. And in Louisville, Kentucky, y'all know about Breonna Taylor. Well, today, they got Breonna's law passed. And that is a ban on no-knock warrants. Breonna was killed. If for those of you who don't know, Breonna Taylor was murdered by police. Her and her boyfriend were in their home, relaxing, chilling, doing what they do. And the police had bad information, broke down their door, and doing what people should do in their own home to defend it, they started shooting at the people coming through the door. Well, turns out that the people coming through the door were the police. So they shot her 8 times, killed her. The boyfriend lived, and then they arrested him for assault on a police officer. an attempted murder on a police officer. They eventually had to let him go, of course. And so now, because of that event, they were able to finally get this law passed. It's called Breonna's Law, which now bans no-knock warrants. They're all now required to have on their body cams at least 5 minutes before executing any warrant. Jessica Green, who is a part of the city council there, she co-wrote the law, and she says that the officers who murdered Breonna Taylor should be fired because they are all still on the job, by the way. Bottom line is, if anybody kicked in your door and they weren't a cop, you would have responded the same way. So those officers should, of course, be charged and prosecuted for their mistake. They made a mistake, and that's their fault that she's dead, and they should pay for it. And if they have anything to say about it in Louisville, Kentucky, they will. You know, racism itself is a pandemic. Of course, Donald Trump and corona are both viruses. So, anyway. Another interesting tidbit, although this has nothing to do with why we march, but just something I'm going to throw out there to my sports fans. So, it appears that Florida just signed a new law as well, that they're going to allow student athletes now to be paid for their likeness. So just so everybody knows, the money is about to enter the game of college football. On the one hand, I think it's a good thing. On the other hand, I don't know. I'm not a real big sports fan, but hell, at least if them guys are going to get beat up in their college years, they might as well get paid for it, especially since we make up 70% of the majority of these sports that everyone loves so much, which is why the NFL has begun to take their seat at the table of justice and do what they need to do in order to make us happy to some degree anyway. I think that's going to be a struggle. I'll wait until the season starts and then we'll see what happens from there. Apparently the NCAA had already gone forward with this thing and made it clear that these students could get money for their likeness, which means now they're going to be recruiting kids right out of high school with big money, and they're going to find they've got a whole new set of ways to cover up anything involving money where college students are concerned. It's a creation of a gray area. So now you're going to have college students running around here with big old fat bankrolls. I wonder how that's going to change the game. That should be very interesting. So, last but not least, the idiot and thief who has decided to hold his rally on Juneteenth in Oklahoma City, or in Tulsa. This disrespectful person, no, I can't call him a person, who of course claims he is the most disrespected president in the history of presidents in the United States, even though he's one of the main ones. He's the father of the birther movement and the creator of all manner of other debauchery and nonsense. I actually had a few things I was going to say about him today, but I've changed my mind. I'm not going to waste my time. I just want you all to pay very close attention to the fact that November is coming. Please make sure you vote. November is coming. Please make sure you vote. Did I say make sure you vote? I just want to make sure you vote. I want to make sure that we are clear about the direction that this country needs to go in, and it is not in the direction that it is headed currently under this nonsense. He had a roundtable meeting of supposedly black leaders, I guess it was the other day. I don't know anybody that was at that table except for the one buffoon that he keeps out in front. it is a shame to me that we have to still deal with these types, but it is what it is. And of course, the righteous always prevail, which means we'll be all right either way it goes. But ladies and gentlemen, this show is dedicated to the marchers, to the protesters, and the people who understand clearly why we march. They understand why it is a necessity. They understand the benefits of it and how we receive the fruit of that labor. The people that I've brought to you today on here are prime examples of why we march and why it's necessary and why we must continue to be diligent in our way and make sure that we press forward and continue making the world a better place, and just by doing our part, whatever that is, whatever little part you can do. My part is small. I try to do a little bit. I probably need to do more, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least make an attempt to do something that was informative and educational for the people that I care about, and that's my people. Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna ride out. It's been a good evening. I thank you all for your time and your energy. I hope that you got something from it. I hope that you can take something away. I hope that you will do some more homework, look up a couple of these people, support these people, and let's continue to make the world a better place for black folks. And I'm out of here, y'all. Love, peace, and chicken grease.